the half room and packed house, but we scheduled these things a lot in advance. So welcome to our community development meeting. It's January 11th, 2024. The time is 10 a.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Brooks, Matari, and Duncan. Are there changes to the agenda? All right, hearing none. Polling for conflicts of interest? None?
None.
Okay. And my opening remarks are that these are deliberations and no public testimony will be taken this morning. This is just discussion between staff and mostly the board. So we'll get right to our deliberations. Item 1 is CUP 23-0013, and this is Kootenai County Water District number 1. And Vlad's going to lead us? Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. I'll be as brief as possible because I understand a majority of people in the audience are for a different matter. The request before you is a conditional use permit to establish a public utility complex facility to expand a non-conforming water storage facility that's currently located on a 1-acre site just north of Bonanza Ranch neighborhood. The applicant, Kootenai County Water District Number 1, wishes to upgrade the existing facility that was constructed originally in the 1970s and has several reservoirs on the property. Their intent is to basically improve the site by removing 2 old reservoirs and bring in a new reservoir that will be approximately 500,000 gallons in size. The property is zoned agricultural suburban and it has the comp plan designation of suburban. It is located at Buckboard Road between Allen Road and Ponderosa Drive. There are, as I said, there are several structures on the property, and this facility was established prior to the adoption of rules and regulations that would have required a conditional use permit, which makes it a non-conforming facility. The code currently states that any expansion to a non-conforming facility requires the approval of a conditional use permit. So one of the existing reservoir tanks will remain and a large one will be constructed, as I stated. These are some of the photos of the existing structures on the property. These 2 older tanks will be removed and recycled, and then the larger one will remain. During the agency comment period, we did solicit comments from agencies with jurisdiction. Everybody was in support. We did not receive any opposition or any concerns with the proposed expansion. We did not receive any public comments on this matter, as it will be a benefit to the community with the provision of better water supply, delivery of better water pressure, and the need to provide water for fire suppression needs in the community. Due to lack of opposition, we support this request. The hearing examiner heard this matter on November 16th of this year and subsequently submitted a recommendation of approval. I don't have anything else to add unless you have any questions for me.
Okay, questions for staff?
No questions, thank you.
All right, thoughts on the matter?
I think it's going to benefit the community there, so it makes sense to approve it.
I'm in favor of this.
Okay, motion?
I move that we approve CUP 23-0013, Kootenai County Water District Number 1.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Matari,
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. All All right, motion passes. Item 2, MSF 23-0002, and this is Ranch 54, which it's incorrect on our agenda. So Pat, I don't know if that really matters. It's just obviously a typo.
Yeah, the case number is correct, and so I think just, the mention that you just did, that it's actually Ranch 54 is sufficient.
Okay. Great. And Vlad, is that you again?
That is correct. I apologize for the error on the agenda, but it is Ranch 54. This is basically to provide the board information that the applicant has complied with the original conditions of approval set forth in the preliminary decision, case number MSP 21-0004. The subject property is located northeast of the intersection of Highway 54 and Highway 95. It is consisting of 142 acres, and the applicant is proposing 27 residential lots. Each lot will be served by individual wells and individual septic systems. The original proposal consisted of having 2 access points off of Howard Road with 2 roads heading east. The applicant has since constructed the roads, and they have been accepted by the Lakes Highway District. Additionally, just wanted to remind the board that this project site is located to Hackney Airfield. The applicant and staff have worked closely with the Idaho Department of Transportation Division of Aeronautics to make sure that the runway protection zone and the inner critical area zone be clearly notated on the face of plat to advise future property owners of some of the encumbrances on site. And additionally, we have specific requirements for no construction or parking of any personal property, including vehicles, in the area where the runway protection zone extends into the subject property. As you can see on these photos, the applicant has complied with placing signs that prohibit parking along that area, along the 2 public roads, as well as on each lot that's encumbered by the runway protection zone. The applicant did provide a warranty bond to Lakes Highway District for the improvements on site. We find that the applicant has complied with all the conditions of approval, and the plat is ready for recordation. I stand for any questions that you have.
Questions?
No questions, thank you.
All right, thoughts on this one since they complied with all the conditions?
Well, when you comply with the conditions set forth, it only seems appropriate to approve it.
Okay, motion?
I move that we approve MSF 23-0002, Ranch 52.
Ranch 54, I second the motion.
What is it?
Ranch 54.
Oh,
It was a typo, yeah.
Ranch 54.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Matari,
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Item 3, MSP 22-0009, Timberland Ranch.
Thank you. Amy Hillen, planner for Kootenai County, for the record. The board did hold a public hearing on this on December 14th. They did hear and close public testimony and rescheduled deliberations for this morning. I do have a PowerPoint presentation. I just want to ask if it's necessary to present it again for you today.
Would you like to see the PowerPoint? Would you like to see the PowerPoint since it was a month ago?
Not particularly.
Okay.
Okay. How about you?
No, I'm fine.
Oh, okay.
I'm fine. I did go back and watch the hearing a couple times, actually. Unfortunately, I was left with more questions than answers. So I will let you two start deliberations, and then I will maybe get a question answered.
The way I see it is that there are some conditions that the applicant is willing to put on the sale of the lots to people, and I think those are reasonable. And so there's no reason to really hold it up.
Okay.
I agree. It's a good project.
Okay. So I guess my question is, and I don't know if anybody's going to be able to answer this, that the reason why we had a public hearing is so the lots wouldn't be encumbered. And so the applicant's okay with the encumbrance now?
They're okay, as I understand it, with a notice. They were uncomfortable with a plat note that we had originally come up with that they felt was unnecessarily restrictive. And so it seems we've hit a compromise.
And that's what I was referring to, is what the applicant suggested, which was the notice and not the encumbrance. The notice was acceptable, the encumbrance was not necessary.
Okay, so the notice being the recording.
There'll still be a little
Yeah.
note on the plat that says there's a use.
Actually, it would be on the CCNRs rather
Thank
than
you.
the plat itself.
Thank you, Pat.
Okay, so they're still going to only have the lot 6, I think, which was the most affected. They're still only going to have that tiny building envelope.
No, actually, that'll go away. It'll just be in the CCNR as a notice that
By the
there's-
way, if you put your house here, you could,
There's, yeah,
There's
a
a manufacturing facility nearby.
okay,
Yep.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
so, all right. Is the CUP valid? Is it active?
Yeah, it's
It is.
valid.
Okay,
Because back in that day, there was no requirement to record those things.
okay. All right, then it sounds like everybody's happy. Take a motion.
I move that we approve MSP 22-0009 Timberland Ranch.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Matari.
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. All right, item,
Pat Braden, Civil Deputy for the Prosecutor for the record, just a point of clarification. This, as I'm understanding the motion, that would modify condition 7.13 as discussed in deliberations.
yes.
Okay, we can get a consensus on that, then
Yes.
we can move forward.
That, yeah.
All right. Item 4, CUP 23-0003, I-90 Wolf Cell Site.
Thank you again, Amy Hillen, planner for Kootenai County. Similarly, this public hearing was held on December 14th. The board heard and closed public testimony on that day, but scheduled deliberations for this morning. I have a PowerPoint prepared as well that was presented last month. So just let me know if you'd like me to review the case.
I probably would like this one.
Do you want me to present on that one? I can.
Yes, please.
Okay, again, Amy Hillen, planner for Kootenai County for the record. The application is for CUP 23-0003, a wireless communication facility. The applicant in this case is Weiss Towers LLC and Inland Cellular LLC. The property is located within the 1700 block of Alder Creek Road, approximately 2.8 miles east of Alder Creek, the intersection of Alder Creek and Wolf Lodge Creek. It is north and adjacent to I-90. Here are the site plans provided by the applicant, 150-foot tall lattice tower and equipment shelter. It will be within a leased area measuring 100 feet by 100 feet, and the purpose is to fill a gap of communication along Interstate 90. The zoning is rural, and according to the comprehensive plan, it is within the resource recreation area. And confirmed from the BOCC hearing that we held, the predominant uses in the area are residential and agricultural. The lots are fairly large in size, so houses are spaced further apart. According to the site plan, the cell tower site is located in the southeast corner of the property. Access will be provided via an easement from Alder Creek Road that travels southward. And then this road does continue to provide access to the neighboring property to the east, which has the closest residence. But then there's what they call the tower access road, which continues to the tower site. When we zoom in closer, this is the 100 by 100 foot fenced area. It's about 150 feet away from the closest property line to the east. When we look at an aerial map that shows some topography, the topography varies in this site. And again, just looking at this from an aerial, you'll see Alder Creek Road and that access road that continues to provide access to the east, and then the tower access road that continues to the tower site, and here is I-90 to the south. So Verizon Wireless and Inland Cellular both provided RF or radio frequency maps, and this is just a synopsis on how to read them, the information they provided me. Each of the maps depict what are known as reference signal received power levels, or RSRP, which is a way to measure signal power. It is measured in negative DMB format and are always negative. So the higher the number, the higher the power of the signal. Usable signals range between negative 75 dBm and 120 dBm. So this was provided to me by Verizon Wireless. The proposed cell site is here, the target area. The nearest tower is by, I believe this is American Tower Company. Shows the existing signal power of that. This is basically the current conditions. And Verizon Wireless then provided me the proposed conditions, and they expect it to improve to negative 70 dBm and negative 110 dBm. Inland Cellular also provided an RF map as well, and this is their proposed signal. This is what they predict will be the coverage, and they estimate between negative 80 dBm and negative 110 dBm. Based on the renditions provided by the photo simulations, by the applicant, they show what the antenna would look like from different areas. So picture number 1 is from the access road location facing south toward the tower. So we're already on the property. This is from that access road. And then from I-90 in the next photo. Picture 3 is also from I-90. And then the picture 4 is from the tower access road looking at the tower. Public agencies did not raise any concern with the cell tower. Community Development Building Division will request third-party inspections or any approvals such as from the FAA, for example. We do not have a contact with FAA, so we rely on ITD, Division of Aeronautics, and the Kootenai County Airport to aid us. The applicant did provide a FAA form that they had filled out. It did expire, but that form oftentimes is filled out and approved at time of building. So we're going to ask for a new form, and it was 7460, which was both confirmed by the Division of Aeronautics and the Kootenai County Airport. Concerns raised by the public, we did receive numerous comments in opposition. Concerns were aesthetics, light and noise pollution, health and environmental concerns, increase of fire risk, location of the residential area, and its effect on property values. For staff analysis, for looking at the code, it meets all the requirements. Staff finds the applicant did provide a sufficient application. Staff recommends the tower be painted a neutral color to blend in with the natural landscape. No additional landscape is required. It is significantly vegetated with mature vegetation. According to the Telecommunications Act of 1996, it does prohibit state and local regulations of such facilities to deny an application on the basis of environmental effects of radio frequency emissions to the extent that such facilities comply with FCC regulations. And for staff, in our opinion, we feel the applicant did demonstrate a lack of coverage in this area. Therefore, staff did recommend approval. For the hearing examiner did hear the request on October 5th, 2023, and also recommended approval. They found that it met the comprehensive plan. For their analysis, they agree with staff that it satisfies Kootenai County Code, acknowledges the Telecommunications Act of 1996, and they did find that the applicant had provided enough information that it's not feasible to co-locate on the AMT tower site. They found that the applicant did provide sufficient data, that one of the requirements for a cell tower site for Kootenai County Code. They relied on the Kootenai Fire and Rescue to raise any concerns for fire, which they did not. With regard to property values, which is the main reason we had the second hearing, they felt they were not convinced that an argument about the effects on property values should serve as a basis for denial. It's difficult to quantify, and likely only one neighbor would see the tower. This was, I believe, brought up at the BOCC hearing, but the hearing examiner raised issue, but for reasons really unknown other than aesthetics, about the height of the tower, and then whether or not a monopine design should be considered. And at the hearing, staff did confirm that it was based on aesthetics reasons. And the applicant did state that a 150-foot tower is what is allowed by code and do not want a monopine design. They did submit a brief explaining that, and that is available to you in the record. The board heard public testimony, and of course, as already stated, we're having the hearing here today. So I stand for any questions that you have.
Okay, Bill, questions?
So you didn't find any problems with it from a health standpoint?
So it's not really my call.
Okay, or
It's not a finding in our code, and we're bound by the
or
Telecommunications Act.
aesthetics?
As far as aesthetics, the hearing examiner raised issue with the height of the tower and with the lattice design, I guess. But they didn't really specify why that would solve the aesthetics issue. And so staff didn't have a whole lot to go on with this HE's recommendation. But I know that the applicant was opposed to the monopine because that makes it look like a tree, and staff is okay with it just being painted a neutral color, and the vegetation seems sufficient. And I haven't seen anything whether the height would be seen, I guess.
If you think that looks like a tree, we have a problem.
I don't want to insert my own opinion, but you definitely would notice a tower there, whether it looks like a tree or not.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Bruce?
No questions, thank you.
Sure.
All right. Any of you want to go first?
Yeah,
I'll go.
Go ahead, please.
I put something together I'd just like to read into the record, and then I'll hand it over for the clerk. After listening to both the applicant and owner of a neighboring property, opposition who represented other property owners in the vicinity of the site, they discussed the issues related to this tower. It became clear to me that there are more factors to this issue than what is readily apparent. The availability of self-service. As we know, federal law is clear that a local jurisdiction cannot prevent telephony service from being provided to individuals. It's unequivocal. And providing such service is a necessity, so no local jurisdiction should be able to prevent such service from being provided to a community where none currently exists. The statute was written when land telephone lines were well established and self-service was in its infancy. Back in the 1990s, it was well understood that large portions of the country did not have cellular service. However, as cellular services reached to the population rose, the threshold for proving gaps in service should correspondingly rise. This is especially so in areas where service already exists. In a desolate place where it is evident that service does not exist, the threshold should be low, and approval for such a conditional use permit should almost automatically be approved. However, in places where service already exists, even if the signal is not at maximum strength, it is difficult to identify how federal statute applies. It was not established that the gap in service was continuous, but rather under only certain conditions in this particular location. The other issue is adverse effect on property values. One of the other factors the BOCC, I believe, must take into consideration is how the addition of a structure, any structure requiring special permitting, could affect the surrounding property values. The complainant, or the opposition, provided survey and professional statement evidence that home values are adversely affected when located near a cell tower. The survey data was from a 1,000-person survey from the National Institute for Science, Law, and Public Policy. And in that survey, it reported, of the 1,000 survey respondents, 94% reported that cell towers and antennas would impact interest in a property and the price they would be willing to pay for it. 79% said under no circumstances would they ever purchase or rent a property within a few blocks of a cell tower. 90% of respondents said they were concerned about the increasing number of cell towers and antennas. Another study published in the Journal of Real Estate Finance and Economics revealed properties located within 0.72 kilometers of a cell tower. Property values declined by up to 9.78% for homes. Research indicates that over 90% of home buyers and renters are less interested in properties near cell towers and would pay less for a property in close vicinity to cellular antennas. Documentation of a price drop up to 20% is found in multiple surveys. Now further, statements were provided from professional real estate agents. While these are anecdotal, the real estate agents were willing to put their names publicly behind them. The information provided included: if the property in question is a view property, the people want the view. They don't want to be looking at some big steel structure. A cell tower would affect the price easily 10 to 20%. If the tower is noticeable, most people would even view the property, wouldn't even view the property. Just an observation based on showing properties since the mid-'80s. Dean Rogers, Realtor. Cell towers are a big deal to a lot of people, Mark. I would say it could decrease as much as 15%. Jerry LeBrond, Realtor. I think it could affect sales prices for sure. I'm guessing in the 10 to 15% range. Justin Keogh, Realtor. Any condition, I believe, perceived or real, on a neighboring property that can reduce the market size of qualified buyers will have an adverse impact on price. Fewer buyers means less demand means lower prices. It's simple economics. The ability to insure the property. This is another issue that I have, is that the issue of fire is a reasonable concern. While a tower catching fire is a relatively rare event, the ability to attract lightning appears less rare. Lightning in a dry environment has a significant capacity to ignite fires. One could reasonably argue that the addition of a cellular tower poses some elevated risk, but is currently indeterminate at a numerical level. And the place to discover that is with an insurance actuary. If, after the installation of a cellular tower, surrounding homeowners discover that their insurance premiums rise as a result, then that cost impact must be taken into account by the BOCC. Further, because so few companies are willing to insure homes in high-risk fire areas, could the addition of such a cellular tower be the deciding factor for an insurance carrier to either significantly increase premiums or worse, stop offering policies to the surrounding homeowners? Factors like distance from fire station, ability to quickly ingress, egress out of the area, tree density, etc., Or factors an insurance carrier could have a significantly higher risk premium from the addition of such a structure. Insurance cost and availability information from the installation of such a structure is another question that must be answered before approving the construction of a cell tower in a wooded area with residential homes. As far as the health risks, the cellular towers may or may not have an adverse health effect, but the BOCC could not take this factor into consideration per law. And my conclusion is that because the gap in cell service coverage was not conclusively established, except under unexplained conditions, and the very likely possibility that neighboring property values can and most likely will be adversely affected by the installation of such a tower, I recommend not to approve the conditional use permit. So that's my statement on
All
that.
right, folks.
Yeah, I'll wait till the peanut gallery gets done.
Are you?
Go ahead.
Okay. So these are really difficult decisions because of several factors. The one thing that, Commissioner Matari pointed out was the 1996 rule doesn't take into effect today's technology, and the fact that, the intent behind the rule, which I think I agree with Commissioner Matari on the fact that it was a brand new thing and it shouldn't have been, denied access to certain people. I look at it also the fact of conditional use permits are not by right. And the fact that people come out and tell us we do not want this here, just that fact alone needs to be looked at, but it also needs to be looked at why. I'm very concerned with the fire issues. And then the presentation at the hearing of the different cell towers on fire is pretty disturbing. I live in a heavy wooded area, and that's a concern for us every year as well, although we do a good job, maintaining our land. So I really couldn't find a good reason to support this when I have to listen to constituents when they have valid concerns when you're talking about a conditional use permit. That's the whole reason it's there, conditional use permit, not by right. So at this point, I don't believe that denying this application is going to have that area suffer without the proper amount of coverage when 1996 did not take into effect the, sorry, I'm not very articulate today, folks, the change in technology. So what happens if the technology today is more dangerous than it was in 1996? That's not addressed. So while I'm not denying this based on health reasons, I'm denying it based on 1996 does not take into effect today. And if they want to revisit that and update it, then fine. And then the fact that constituents are telling us that they are concerned about fire danger, especially the one who lives right next door. And property values, that is one thing that when you are talking a conditional use permit and that use is going to affect property values, whereas a use by right affecting property values, I don't put as much weight on that, if that makes sense. So that is where I stand.
Chair
Yes.
Duncan, just a question of clarification. This is Pat Braden, Civil Deputy Prosecutor again. What standard specifically do you think the 1996 Telecommunications Act is defective on? And bearing in mind, this is the federal law that we're still stuck with in 2024, and we still have to follow it.
Sure. So it talks about the technology. You can't use that as a basis, like health effects as a
Right,
basis of
that is
denial.
correct.
And that's based on the technology that was available in 1996. Now, nearly decades later, that we don't know if the technology exists today is more harmful, less harmful. We don't know that. It doesn't contemplate
Can I make
that.
a comment?
Well, let me make a comment first. I don't think that's a valid basis for denial, to be honest. I agree that the FCC and/or Congress need to examine this again, and they haven't. But at the same time, that falls into the health effects category that cannot be a basis for a decision on these issues. You would you have to base your decision on substantial evidence in the record. You can obviously consider the decision criteria that are in our land use and development code. And you would also have to find that it either does not address a significant gap in coverage, or that it is not the least intrusive means of filling that gap. And so those are the criteria you have to apply. The 1996 Telecommunications Act still applies, and the FCC rules implementing the Telecommunications Act still apply until they're changed. So I would possibly, advise you to revisit some of your reasoning for the denial.
Sure. So,
Basis.
social, this is not allowed by right, and the people affected have come forward to say they don't want it. Economic may or may not affect this gentleman's property value and insurance rates for the area because of an increased fire risk, which we did observe testimony at the public hearing along with pictures that indicated a potential increase in fire risk. Would you like more?
If you have,
Okay.
if you don't, you can, sorry.
That's okay.
If you don't have more, I mean, you could end right there. If you do have more, then,
I'll just end right there for now. And
Okay.
Commissioner Matari had more.
Yeah, I had a question, because the way I understand that statute is that it's with whatever technology that the FCC has is approved at the time.
yes,
So they can approve technology today, and if they have approved it, we cannot use that technology as a basis for this 19.
for denial. Yeah,
That's right.
that is absolutely
So as long
correct.
as they're approving the technology, you can't use the technology as a basis to deny.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I'm, after going through the hearing and listening to all the testimony and going through the paperwork, I don't find anything other than anecdotal evidence and subjective evidence why people are opposed to this. I'm not saying they're not opposed to it, but to say my neighbor's baby got sick is anecdotal. That is not, a study or anything else. I was a real estate broker here for quite some time. And I don't agree with the couple of agents who came forward and said that we're going to lose 15 to 20%. And I just disagree with that. So I haven't seen anything other than anecdotal evidence. And if that anecdotal evidence is what we should be ruling on, then I suggest the next step would be to remove all the cell phone towers in Kootenai County, all of them. But I don't believe that. That's all I have.
Okay. I guess I would pose a question. So what effects do the citizens' desires have on what they want to live with? So if the majority of citizens do not want to live with certain technology, is it still demanded that that technology be provided whether they want it or not? So that's just a question in my mind. I mean, when you have a group of people who live, similarly, and I mean, I think of Amish communities. So is Ford harmed because they're not selling vehicles in Amish communities? That's a poor example, but anyway, that's just something that came to my mind. So is there a motion?
I move that we deny the CUP 23-0003 I-90 Wolf cell site.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Nay.
Commissioner Matari,
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. All right, CUP 23. All right, 10:40, meeting adjourned. Thank you, folks.